Hi everybody. So today we're going to talk about how you do everything is how you do anything. But before we do that, I just want to tell you, do you know that on your video that you're watching now, especially if you're watching obviously on your phone, if you click on top right, there's a little cog that you can actually tap on and it will say playback speed, and you can actually speed something up or you can slow it down. And I just find that really handy. And so if I'm talking too slowly for some people or too fast, because I can talk fast, you can actually speed me up or slow me down, or anyone else you're watching for that matter. I just think that's a great, I didn't realise that until kind of a few months ago. Anyway, just in case you want to speed things up. I do that when I'm watching recipes. So today we're talking about how you do anything is how you do everything. And I really like that. It's like, I don't think people think about that enough in terms of, they don't realise how they, and I'm talking particularly about emotions because I consider myself first and foremost an emotional coach. And I like to help people manage their emotions, especially because I work with a lot of people who have been reject, deny, avoid and suppressing them. And so for me, it's about helping people realise that actually, if you can do the small bit moments, the small emotions, you can do the bigger ones. Because they're all the same, it's just a matter of scale. They're not all the same, but you know what I mean. It's like, if I can do a small amount of pain, then I can probably better off doing a big amount of pain. So it's all a learning curve. It's like we're building up to the big stuff, aren't we? But first of all, understanding that how you do everything is how you do anything, and how you do anything is how you do everything. So let's just focus on emotions. So the other day I lost my sunglasses in the surf. We were swimming in the sea and my sunnies came off and completely disappeared. And I realised in that moment, because I'm pretty well attuned to my emotional part, I was like, oh, okay, they've gone. It was a bit of a shock. I was a bit annoyed. I was disappointed. I felt a little bit miffed. But those emotions weren't big emotions. They were fairly small emotions. Probably I was a bit disappointed, 4 out of 10. I was a bit miffed, 4 out of 10. I was annoyed, 5 out of 10. And so I was very aware, and I think the more you do this, the easier it gets. It's like anything. It's like anything you practice. It's like if you do it often enough, you get good at it, don't you? And so I was aware that I felt all those feelings, but they weren't big feelings, but I did notice them. And just by noticing them and allowing them and acknowledging them, oh, I'm feeling this. Oh, not out loud, maybe just in your own head, is a form of processing emotions. I did do, though, I went up into my, it's funny because I was with my partner and he was probably more upset than I was. And so he's, I was like, and I said, well, we're not going to be able to find them. It's a big ocean and that's just the draw was kind of pulling back out. So I can't remember what you call it, the tide. Anyway, and the more I felt like he was perhaps being emotional, I was even less emotional, because I realized that as a couple we tend to complement each other. So if one gets upset, the other one might stay calm, and it's like we'll do that, that's just normal. And so if one gets really calm, the other one might get upset, and so we kind of try and balance it out in some way. It was called complementarity. And so I was up in my head going, you know what, they were old, I didn't really like them anyway, they were very scratched, it's not a huge deal. So I was aware that I'm up in my head trying to rationalize, trying to justify, trying to make it all better, probably more so for him than for me. But I realized I was connected to those slightly uncomfortable emotions. They weren't big uncomfortable emotions, but they weren't small ones. And I realized I've got better and better at that because I didn't do any emotions. I certainly didn't do the big ones, and I certainly didn't do anything in between. But I realized everything's on a scale, and it's not about, I suppose it's, for me, it's about teaching people, you don't mollycoddle those feelings, you don't feel sorry for them, but you don't repress, deny and avoid them either. It's that balance, that lovely balance of, oh yeah, I am actually quite disappointed, I am a bit annoyed with myself, I shouldn't have really worn them, you know, and if I could have gone back and taken them off, I would have done. And so there's all of that. There's a bit of regret in there, there's a bit of annoyance, there's a bit of disappointment, because now I haven't got any sunnies. And I do like wearing sunglasses, and of course they're prescription sunglasses because they help me see, and so they're not just sunnies, they're actually prescription sunnies, and so they cost a few bob to replace. So it's about understanding, if I can do the small emotions, then that's going to help me do the bigger ones, because how we do anything is how we do everything, and how we do everything is how we do anything. So I suppose it's the micro and the macro, isn't it? And so if you're wanting to do emotions better, start small. Start with the small stuff. Start with understanding or realizing or becoming more aware of the things that do annoy me slightly, do annoy me a little bit, are a bit disappointing. It's interesting as well, and I think I've talked about this in another video, about, I remember when I was applying for a job, this is a few years ago now, gosh, it must have been 12 years ago, and I applied for this job, and the actual people that were interviewing me made it out that I had a good chance of getting this job, so my hopes were high. And actually they went with another person who had more experience in that field, and I didn't get it, and I was really disappointed. And I realized that this disappointment was like this heavy weight on my chest. I really, really would have loved that job. And everyone around me, don't worry, there's another job for you. Oh, well, it wasn't meant for you. And I'm all well-meaning, lovely people who were trying to make me feel better, but actually it didn't, because I still felt disappointed, and I had to go away and feel that disappointment. And I must have sat with it for an hour or two. I think I just chilled out on my bed or something like that, and I just was aware, and I acknowledged it, I held it. And this is what I teach. How do you manage it? Well, first of all, you become aware of it, you notice it, you gauge it. Wow, it's disappointment. Or if you don't know the word for it, you say, oh, it's heavy, it's this sort of weight on my chest, and it's big and it's dark. And so you can treat it as a sensation if you don't know the word for that emotion, because, you know, a lot of us haven't learned the language of the heart, which is emotions, and so it could be a sensation. But all I knew is it felt sad, and I just sat on the bed, or laid on the bed, I think I did, and I just held it. And it's like, it's okay to be disappointed. I allowed my disappointment just to be there. Not because I liked it, because I didn't. Not because I wanted it, because I didn't want it. But I allowed it to be there because I knew that if I repressed, denied, and it's going to come back and bite me on the bum. And that's the trouble. It's like it's instant gratification. No. Instant gain for long-term pain. So in that moment, I could have rationalized, got on with it, you know, God did something else, spiritually bypassed it, said, oh, it wasn't meant for me, rationalized, justified, all the usual suspects, intellectualized it. But then it would have stored up in my body. Now, it's that kind of thing that stores up in your body, and it creates these stuck points that don't do you any good, that don't work for you in the long run. So yes, short-term gain for long-term pain. That's like anything. It's like any addiction. It's like if you're uncomfortable or you're in pain, you'll often go use one of your coping mechanisms. Sex, drugs, you know, food, rock and roll, alcohol, you name it, spending, getting on the old, you know, internet and seeing what you can buy, watching, scrolling, you name it. We've got every kind of addiction you like to think. And so we'll use one of those short-term gains for long-term pain. And so for me, I'd rather go short-term pain for long-term gain. So if I sit with it now for a little bit of time, and I think being aware, it's there, naming it, it's heavy, or it's an emotion, it's disappointment. Wow. And don't expect others to kind of just sit in it with you, because maybe they're no good at feeling their feelings either. So you're not going to go take it to someone that doesn't do feelings, because they'll just want you to rationalise, distract, or not think about it, or intellectualise it. So come back to you. Go sit on the bed, go sit on wherever, just for a few minutes, just to acknowledge it, be aware of it, acknowledge it, put your hand on it, and just tell it it's okay to be there in your head. You don't have to say this out loud. It's okay to be there. I'm right here with you. And then just sit there with it. There's a thing in, when someone dies, the Jewish culture have a thing where they go sitting shiva. And all that means is they will go sit with the person. And I think we don't do this very well in the West. I think we're like, we don't know what to say, we don't know what to do. Sometimes we just need to be with someone, just to know that they're not alone. We don't need to talk about it, we don't need to try and rationalize it, we don't try to talk our pain away. No, it just is, isn't it? It just is. And in a way, that's what we're doing with ourselves. It just is. So just allow it. And I'm telling you, you start off small. Start off with the small stuff that isn't too hard to manage, and practice. Because this is important, and I'm talking to the people that have made it unimportant, the people that have repressed, denied and avoided it. I'm not talking to people that already know how to manage this. One of the biggest things, when you work with someone, is emotional regulation. Well, you can't regulate until you've learned to feel it, acknowledge it, and allow it. And so these are the people I'm talking to that may be struggling to do the whole emotional stuff, that maybe have got addictions, that do eat their pain away, drink it away, sex it away, spend it away, work it away, bury yourself in something. And so all I'm encouraging you to do is just to be more aware, acknowledge it, allow it, pay some attention to it. Maybe hold it, give it some loving. Just hold it gently. Doesn't need to be told anything. Just say, I'm right here with you. And see what happens. So how you do anything is how you do everything. In terms of emotions, we're focusing on emotions. We could talk about other things, but let's just keep it small, keep it doable, keep it within this sort of space here in regards to emotions. And so if you want to be able to cope with the bigger ones, then you have to learn to cope with all of them, because they're all relevant, they're all important, and you matter, and your emotions matter. And so don't hear me. I'm not talking about mollycoddling them. Oh, you poor baby, I'm feeling sorry for them. I'm talking about being there, allowing them, holding them gently, and maybe just sitting with them. Let's see what happens. Do your own experiment. What happens when you do that? Anyway, I'll leave that with you for now. Thank you for listening. Bye for now.